Welcome to One in Christ, where the radiant story of Jesus come to life.
Hello everyone, this is Long from OIC Communication Team. Today we have Tyler with us. Hello Tyler.
Hello, thank you.
Do you mind give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, my name is Tyler Levin. I am now a Virginia local. I live in Forest. I graduated from Liberty with a bachelor's in cinematic arts, but I'm now pursuing teaching and education.
Welcome. That's an awesome background. Today we want to talk about a topic about culture and faith. Tell me a little bit, where did you born and raised?
So I was born in Chicago, Illinois, which is the Midwest, so very different from the South here. And I lived there until I went to college, which was 2014, and then went to school at Liberty, and then my family moved to Virginia. So originally born and raised in Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Would like to hear about some your family traditions. What about, let's start with food. Any particular food or dietary habits with your family?
Well, this is not a good one, I should say, but because of my mom, she would always have some sort of pop or like a Coke and chocolate, and that was like breakfast for her. So unfortunately, I've inherited that because I love having some kind of pop or soda in the morning and then a piece of chocolate. Now, every time after dinner, I need to have a piece of chocolate because I have a chocolate craving. Yeah, so it's not exactly a good dietary habit to have, but I have it nonetheless. And then, let's see, my family loves to have barbecue a lot, barbecue burgers, hot dogs, sausages, all kinds of stuff like that. And then, most of the time when it comes to dinner, we always have some sort of protein, either mashed potatoes or some sort of potato, and then like a canned veggie, which is, it's nothing super special there, but, that's what we do.
That's pretty cool. I see nothing wrong with a lot of sugar in the morning. Happy beginning.
I'm not proud of it.
Right.
I'm not proud of it.
Any other family traditions, something related to culture, you think?
Well, things like my family's very loud, and we're not exactly... if you were to come over to our house, we wouldn't exactly be on our best behavior. We'd sit there and we'd be yelling across the house to each other and, we screaming at each other and laughing so loud. And, we might make fun of each other, but it's all out of love. And so I think that's different to some families who are trying to be very respectful. We're not exactly that. We love to do games. We love to play games with each other. We also love to spend time together, and we love to cook out, have barbecues. I don't know. Is there those kinds of traditions? Yeah. We also like to do things for holidays. 4th of July is around the corner. So, we're going to have somewhat of a barbecue for that. We shoot off our own fireworks that terrify me because I almost got blown up by one year. So I'm PTSD from that. But yeah, that's that. But yeah, those are some traditions we do.
Tell me if there's any values or principles from your culture or family that you hold very dear and may influence your actions and decisions in your life?
I think that something that my father was always showing us as kids was that, family was very important, and that, being there for your family was something that is something that he really emphasized, how important it was to stand up for your family and to stand up for people who were doing wrong to your family. My father, he grew up in a kind of a bad household. His father didn't really care about him, and his brothers were always getting into trouble with him, and he was not the best kid, but he said no matter what happened, they were always standing up for one another, and I think that's something that I value very highly, and make sure that in our family, even if someone's picking on someone else, we're always there to stand up for one another, we're always there to continuously love each other. I think also just continuously caring for one another. Whenever there's some kind of problem or need, we're dropping everything just to help them and being there for them. I think there's never been a time in my life when I've had an event or some kind of baseball game, or if I did theater and I was in a show, I think there was always someone from my family there to support me, and I think that was something very important too that I love and want to implement in the future when I get a family. I don't know about culture that might guide my actions or decisions, because I think the culture today is a little different, and they don't always do things that I would agree with, especially modern culture and secular culture. So I think a lot of that value I get is from what my mom and dad were teaching me, what the Bible teaches me, and how I see people I look up to, men of faith and pastors and friends, how they live their lives, and I think all that kind of shapes my values and my decisions.
You just inspired me some, I think, very important question here is you've been raised up with a healthy family and with Christian values in your family, but you've been exposed to a culture that is dramatically different. Do you still remember when was the first time you've been shocked at the difference between this?
I think the biggest wake-up call was high school. And it was weird because junior high was still pretty much controlled in a sense where kids might have acted bad, but there was still I was still in a bubble, so to speak. I don't know, I guess I was just young and naive, so I didn't understand a lot of things happening. But then I get to high school and I start seeing these things that are talked about in media and in TV shows, and they're happening in front of my eyes, such as drug use and alcohol use. And these are high school kids doing it. So that was a huge shocker. And then I'm starting to get to know people who are doing it too. And they're friends of mine, and now I'm blown away, because this is where me growing up with Christian values and knowing what's right and wrong, so to speak, knowing that drinking is bad and smoking is wrong and swearing is even wrong too, and then all of a sudden these people are doing it around me, it's a big clash of I've been taught this thing, but now they're doing it, and then some friends of mine would join in and do it, friends who are Christian, and then now I'm conflicted because I'm like, where's the line drawn? Am I able to do some of this stuff? Am I not able to do some of this stuff? And so I think that was a big issue too, is because then I'm struggling in high school because you started kind of changing to follow what the world was doing. And I think that was something that I was struggling with all through high school, was just the world versus following Christ. And I think that was a huge shock for me. It actually kind of also changed. So all through high school, I was following the wrong kind of things, Well, I'd say freshman year, it was a challenge and a struggle. Each year, I got more and more secular, so to speak. And I started hanging out with the wrong people and doing some of the wrong things. Then comes college, and I went to Liberty. And boy, again, it was a different type of culture shock, because Liberty is a very Christian environment. It's very encouraging in how you continue to grow with the Lord. And so where I went from high school, where I was losing my grip with God, all of a sudden I come to Liberty, and I'm snapped back into a different reality where, oh my word, I need to change. I need to start following the right one. I need to start following the right way. I need to repent for what I've been doing and how I've been living. And so I think why high school was bad, college, I just suddenly realized that I'm following the wrong things and I need to start pursuing God. So there was a big culture shock in high school, and then college I culture shocked again, but for the good.
Wow, thanks God for transforming that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just heard a story. One person this morning tells me that there is a young high schooler and just went to a college orientation, and the ice-breaking game, just asking how many of you have experienced a drug high, and how many of you had a one-night stand or 3P, or wow, they're so shocked, and it's.
This is an icebreaker?
Yes, in a college orientation.
Oh my word.
Yeah, can't believe. Do you have any words to those young people?
From my personal experience, I don't think it makes you a better person or more experienced person if you have done those things. I think that to say, if they're like, hey, you haven't done this, what's wrong with you? You're not living life. I think that that's not true. I think that it's okay not to do those things, and it's okay. I think so many times I would give in to when people would make fun of me for not doing those things, which kind of influenced my decisions to do them. For instance, I used to vape a lot, and so I was made fun of for that, and I was like, oh, I guess it couldn't hurt me, but it's okay not to. And I think it's actually more admirable if you stand your ground on, these are my morals and beliefs, and I will not waver, especially if those morals and beliefs are Christian-based, because now you're not wavering on your faith, and you're not wavering on what God tells us is important. And I think that's what I would say is stick to what Scripture tells us, because it's like you might think that going with the crowd or doing these things is what's right, and what would make you more accepted in society. And I think right as that seems it's wrong. And the whole point of the Bible is that it's countercultural. And so, following the Bible and pursuing holiness is what's truly noble and what's truly right. So I would say, yeah, keep pursuing that rather than conforming to the world. And life will be hard, but it'll be worth it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. I think standing firm, like you said, is admirable.
Yeah.
And even though you feel like you will become the minority and you may losing friends like that, but maybe you will meet some admirable friends as well.
I will. I honestly agree with that. I had so many friends, so I thought, when I was hanging out with the wrong crowds. Then I lose them all because I'm pursuing my faith at Liberty. But I found greater friends through Liberty, and some of my best friends now. And these are relationships that are much deeper because you have that connection to God, and because they're your brother and sister in Christ. So you can really talk about life's issues. You can really talk about what's going on, rather than just being like, yeah, I'm okay, nothing's bothering me kind of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind telling me a little bit about spiritual journey? I know you're more like raised from a Christian family, but how do you see yourself? Were you at the moment you became a Christian?
Yeah, I was raised a Christian in a Christian household. It was a little interesting because my mom was a Christian, and my father, he became a Christian to marry my mom. He was Jewish, and he didn't really understand Christianity, but in order to marry my mother, he was like, oh yeah, I'll become a Christian. So he did the steps and followed the actions, but he didn't really mean it. So growing up, it was interesting because my mother brought a lot of emphasis on going to church, reading the Bible, doing all those kinds of things. And my father really didn't care. He was very supportive of my mother in that regard, but he really didn't lead as a man of the household should lead. He was a great man. I'm not trying to bash my father, but he, as far as like being that Christian biblical leader, he was lacking. And I think I had this conflict throughout my childhood. Though we went to church, and I learned a lot about the gospel, and I went to what was called the Awana. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Yeah. And one of the verses, this is when I first became a Christian, was one of the verses was talking about, I honestly think it was John 3:16. I was trying to memorize it, because if you memorize it, you got a piece of candy. And I'm sitting on the couch with my mom memorizing it, and she's like, all you have to do is believe that Jesus died for your sins in your heart and you'll go to heaven. And so, of course, oh yeah, I want to go to heaven. That's all I have to do. So I said the prayer and I did the actions. And then, from that point on, I kept, I was claiming I was a Christian. And then, come high school, like I was saying, I started more and more following the patterns of the world and hanging out with wrong people and doing the wrong things. And then I went to my community college before I came to Liberty, and that was probably the lowest point of my life, because I really didn't even care about college at that point. I was working a lot, so because I was always working, I was always refusing to go to class, so I ended up having to drop out of community college. And then we went to, my parents were like, well, you need to either get a full-time job now, or, you need to get back into school. So I did Liberty University online, and then ended up flunking out of that too, because I didn't care. So, at this point, I'm like, I was really lost. And then I ended up, by God's grace, getting accepted to Liberty. And, I was like, okay, this is a kind of a start over moment. Came to Liberty, and it was, I think it was my second month there. I think it was October. And it was this really, every Wednesday, this thing called Campus Community, where it was like campus church, so to speak. Only it wasn't church; it was just like a gathering of students, and then we'd worship, and there'd be a message, and then you'd go back to your dorms and talk about it in community groups. But one of these nights, the whole sermon series was talking about finding the presence of God and what that looks like, and how we can find it, and how we can invite it. And I think just something about that night was different, because apparently there were like 3,000 students in this room, and we were all just, we were learning that to invite the presence of God, you have to truly yearn for it and long for it, and honestly seek it. And so I think that night 3,000 students truly were inviting the presence of God, and he showed up, and there was something honestly supernatural about the room that night, because everybody was just worshiping like I had never seen people worship before, and people were crying for no reason. I started crying for no reason, just because there was something going on in my heart, and God was definitely moving. And we walked out of that night. I remember going to my hallway, and everybody who was passing me was just like, "Wow, did you feel what was going on in there?" Everybody felt it. Something was happening, and I think it was that night that I talked to my community group leader. His name was Zach, and I said, "Zach, I really don't think I understand how to follow Christ. I think I've been doing it wrong my entire life." And I said, "Zach, I really just want to rededicate my life and try this the right way, and I want to try pursuing God now the way I'm supposed to be doing it." And so that moment, I rededicated my life again, and that was the point where I truly started, pursuing God in the way a Christian should pursue. Becoming a disciple, getting into the Word daily, and praying. And so it was that year that I kind of started to shift my mind and heart. So yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Well, after the transformation in your mind and your heart, you become really sincere Christian. Do you find your Christian faith or Christian values has been transforming yourself? Like any thinking back, if was some major decisions you made because of your Christian faith?
Yeah. Biggest one off the top of my head is just relationships. Honestly, I had been dating just to date, and then I became a Christian, and then I rededicated my life that night, and that was every person wants love, but that was something that I was like, what, God, I need to focus on the real relationship between me and you before I can do anything else and get this right. And so I really stopped trying to pursue women and focused on just building my relationship with God. And then through this time of just building that relationship, I found great friends who told me that when you do find a woman, truly a biblical woman who would, find one who's going to encourage you, who's going to challenge you in your faith, who's going to build you up, who's going to be equally at the same level as you. And that was something I had never really cared about, pre-rededication. Biggest thing I was like, oh, are they a Christian? That's a plus. If they weren't, it's okay. I'm still going to date them. The unequally yoked thing. And I didn't realize how important that was until after I dedicated my life, or rededicated, so to speak, because I was like, I really want a woman who's going to have these qualities that I can see that's going to help me in my walk. That they also emphasize the importance of what following Christ is and how important that is in your life. So that was something that changed. It's just my viewpoint on how I dated. And then, come to find out 3 years later, after really not dating anybody, I found Lisa, and Lisa is, truly that woman who's got those qualities, who's seeking Christ above all things, above our relationship. And that was something that really made me attracted to her, actually, was because I wasn't looking, and then I found this girl who had this ambition about her to pursue God. And I think that was what was important, and that was what I needed. So that was one thing. I think when I was on film sets, just continuously having to pray, because, on film sets, you're with a lot of secular people. And so, you need to pray a lot. And so I think my relationship with God definitely flourished, because in those moments when you just feel so alone, you're like, I'm the only Christian here. I don't know what to do, or who to talk to, or how to talk to people, and I need help. And so I think that my relationship with him definitely flourished in that moment too, because I needed to depend on him to get through those sets, to change those people, to work with those people, to have patience with those people. You know, many times I had to pray for, hey, Lord, help me with this relationship, because these people are just completely on a different level. Like they are, I cannot not stand being around them, but I need to be around them, and I know I can be an influence to them of your gospel. So a lot of those things changed of how I worked, just with like jobs. Also just praying for, you know, and depending on God for the future, because, you know, that's something that I guess every college kid is like concerned about, you know, when they graduate, is like, I don't know what's next. And I think that my relationship had to grow there too, because based on the rededication now, I knew that, you know what, it doesn't matter what I'm going to be doing as long as I'm doing it for God. And I think that was something that my mindset changed there too.
That's beautiful. Thank God for the amazing journeys here. I heard you were with the video production industry and a lot of Hollywood value system on one side. Do you have a particular example that we can have a more sense of like understanding of how do they view things? How do they think things differently?
I do. So on this previous set, the last set I worked on, you know, a lot of, I'd say, mid-30s, and they're referred to as what's called roadies, and they're people who work on the road all the time. They don't really have a family life, okay? One of the guys on this set, who was our key grip, he had a daughter at home and a wife, and he's on set, and he's literally trying to hook up with these girls on set and have, you know, one-night stands with these girls from set. And I'm sitting there like, you're married and have a kid, and you're trying to sleep with these women? Are you kidding me? Like, I was baffled. And, you know, I didn't ask him, but I asked a guy who I was friends with. I said, hey, what's his deal? He's like, oh, the wife's okay with it. I was like, the wife's okay with it? He's like, yeah, she knows about it, and so she's fine with it because, you know, she's still married to him. I'm like, what kind of messed up, what are they talking about? I was amazed. And so that was one example where I was just like, what is going on? Other times, you know, the film world is such about self-promotion. It is such a world of, I need to watch out for myself, because if I don't watch out for myself, I'm not going to get, you know, the next position. I'm not going to get the next gig. So everybody's trying to backstab everybody. And I saw that so many times where people were throwing others under the bus just so they could look better. And I again, baffled. And so, you know, no one would take responsibility for mistakes that were made. If you did make a mistake, you know, you were trying to justify it somehow. There were producers, and this is just one of the saddest things, is there were producers who, this was supposed to be a Christian-based film, and there were producers who, you know, people look up to the producers because, you know, they're the ones that, first of all, they're the most powerful on set. They're like the CEOs, essentially, of the companies. So people are always watching them, and these producers are not leading. They're proclaimed Christians, right? But they're not leading like a Christ follower should lead. I'm trying to think of, there was an example I had in my head, and now I forgot it. I don't remember the exact situation, but at the end of the show, I talked to this woman who had been, she was the production office coordinator, and she had been doing many, many films. Okay, she had worked with Marvel Studios. She'd been on Black Panther. She knew many famous celebrities, right? So she was pretty well known, and she had decided to work on a Christian film because she wanted a change of environment. She wanted to be in a more encouraging environment, an environment that was welcoming, non-judging, right? At the end of the film, she comes up to me, and she was a good friend of mine, so we were talking, and she said, you know, Tyler, I'm just so hurt because these producers and this film that was supposed to be a different environment, different from the world, was even worse than what the world was doing. The way I was treated, the way they were running things, it was just terrible, and I have such a bad taste about this. And as a Christian, hearing this to a non-Christian, I'm like, that's terrible. Then we were doing something absolutely wrong. And I said, I'm so sorry that this was the whole, this is what happened. But, Christianity is not what they're making it seem. That's not correct. And I'm so sorry about that experience. So I think that, like on set, you saw a lot of these, secular things, and people were always doing it too. And, because you were away from family, because you had really no accountability, because, you're working constantly, I guess all your morals and beliefs just kind of went out the door, which is not, I don't think that's right. So I was challenged too, because on set, I needed to be that light, especially on a Christian set. Like, I needed to be the light on a Christian set. That's so sad when the leaders of the set need to be the light. I should be the light too, but these leaders who have the platform to impact everybody below them, they need to be the biggest light. And I was so sad by that, and that left me with such a bad taste about Christian filmmaking too. I'm not saying all sets are like that, but this one in particular was.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Like you said, if the leaders may stand up and to change the culture and to actually practicing the Christian value as the true light in the world, unfortunately, is a lot of times the world actually got to overrun the Christian values.
I think that goes with any kind of person who has any kind of platform, is that people look up to you, and people will always watch you whether you think you're being watched or not. And so I think that you need to understand, especially if you're a Christian, you need to be living like a Christian, because that one person who's challenged in their faith, who doesn't know if they want to pursue God yet, and they're watching you, and all of a sudden they see you doing these things, they're like, these Christians are fake. So I think that you have a duty as someone who has a platform or influence, especially as a Christian, to pursue Christ,
But have you ever thought that as us, me or you, as just one person, we're not a big influencer, have you ever thought that nothing we can do about this culture, nothing we can change as a Christian? Have that thought come to my mind?
Yeah, all the time. As untrue as it is, because I think that even just as much as you think you're a nobody, you do have influence. You do have the power to change other people's lives. But I have to say I haven't thought that is wrong, because I have. I'm like, what can I do? I'm on the lowest point of the totem pole, No one's going to listen to me. No one's going to look at me. But they do. People do. And I think that maybe not by hearing what you say, but by your actions. And I think you can be the reason someone ends up coming to Christ, because they're like, Tyler, why are you doing this all the time? Why are you constantly taking the time to care for people and to pray for them? Well, because I believe in something greater, and I believe that Christ calls me to do that. So even in someone who has no platform or no influence, you can still make a difference. But to answer the question, no, I didn't believe that for a long time. I have a hard time sometimes believing that, but it's true. I now understand that, yes, you can make a difference and you can impact the kingdom. Yeah.
So as you are today, you are among those middle school students and other teachers as well, and also you're in the middle of the church. You're in the international group and you're in the youth group. So tell us what has been your ways to lead, to impacting other people?
I think if I was to look at the youth group, I think that something I learned from just my youth minor was that, you really need to understand how the youth feel. I think that every youth youth student, has the same desires and wants. They want to be accepted. They want to be welcomed. They want to be, approved. They want to be loved. And they all kind of have these same kind of wants and needs. It all kind of boils down to those same kinds of things. And so when I'm leading the youth, I try to speak to them as if I'm welcoming those needs. trying to build off of those needs. I'm trying to, welcome them to youth group. I'm trying to show them that they're needed there, that they're loved there, that, they're welcomed there, that we want them there. So when I'm with them and with the youth, I definitely have that approach, and I definitely try to come alongside of them. And I think Lisa and Jillian, the other two youth leaders, we all agree that we want to, really want them to, we want to come alongside of them and do life with them, because, it's hard to do life, especially when you're alone as a teenager, and you can see that also working in middle school. Kids don't want to be alone. They want to have friends. And when they're alone, that's when they make the wrong decisions, the wrong choices. That's when they're at their worst. And so, we all understand this. And so we really want to make sure that when we're teaching and we're leading the youth, we want to come alongside them to be with them. So that's something that when I lead youth group, that is very important to me. International group, I think that one is it's a little bit more different, because one of the biggest things I love about our church is that we are so multi-ethnic. And that is something that, as someone who's grown up in America, that really I haven't seen very much of, because it's America. As much as, there is a lot of, it's a melting pot. There's a lot of races and ethnicities. But to be at a church where everybody's different backgrounds, different places they come from, different languages they speak, but we all serve one God, has been something that is like really eye-opening for me, and I love the picture of it. I love that no matter where we're coming from in this world, we're all still worshiping the same God, and that we all still believe the same God and believe in His Word, the Bible. And I think that is something that is truly beautiful, because we've said it many times, but heaven is not going to be all white people. It's going to be all races, tongues, nations, all praising God and Christ for what He's done. And I think in international group, I see a small glimpse of that. In the church, I see that too. International group, I see that too, because I get to know these people on a little bit more personal level, because it's a smaller group, so we get to talk more, we get to hang out more. And so, when I help lead that group, that is an emphasis on that, is I really want to make these relationships where we can start talking more than just, hello, how are you, kind of relationships, but how is life? What are you struggling with? What's going on in your life? And I think Amber as well, who's the other main leader, is that, she really makes it she really does a good job emphasizing that. She really, makes it and takes the time to get personal with each person. And I love that about it, So, I think leading that group, I make it very relational, and I really want to get to know each and every one of those members there, and I want to come alongside as well and do life with them, but in a different scale, And I think that if they come to that group, that I really feel like they're welcome there, because that's what our goal is, to get, I feel like our goal is a little bit deeper than the church, because we're smaller, so we can get more intimate and relational.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for ministering in our church, and thank you for impacting those young people's life.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for taking the time and to talk with us.
Yeah.
And love to hear more in the future.
Yeah.
Good to have you.
Thank you, Long. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please subscribe if you like our content. One in Christ is a multi-ethnic church. You're more than welcome to join us and to worship our Lord together. And we'd like to hear your unique stories with Jesus in the future.